Hey folks, it's time for a network engineer's perspective on the AT&T crisis that happened last week. All the AT&T phones around here were down. It affected some other carriers that use AT&T's network. Everybody was like, oh, it's a cyber attack. Yeah, it could have been, but I was like, it probably isn't. So, I'm a network engineer. I don't work on AT&T's equipment. I've done some very big jobs in the past, right? But these days I work for a medium-sized company. But last night, yesterday during the day, we had a location. Half of their equipment was down. Half the computers, half the printers. We could ping some stuff. We couldn't ping other stuff. Phones were down. And I came to the conclusion that the switch was just acting up. Certain ports weren't working in the switch stack. So I said, I'm going to reboot the switch stack. I have a UPS with a power outlet group that allows me to reboot that single switch stack. All the redundant power supplies and everything can be shut down, powered back on. Of course, I lose connection to the UPS in the network when that happens. Right, I could still see the UPSs. They were working, but as soon as the switches go down, up, they're going to lose connection. But hopefully when the switch is rebooted, it all comes back to life. Did the reboot, and it did not come back to life. So I finished what I was doing in Cincinnati, and then I headed to Lima. I worked like 14, 15-hour day yesterday. I got there and tried to reload the switch, and it worked for like 35 seconds, and then it lost its configuration and went down again. I found the bad switch in the stack. I got it replaced with the new switch, but then it would not communicate with certain things, the other switch stacks and stuff. I finally figured out that I put two of the GBICs in the wrong slot. I moved them over. I plugged the other stuff into the right slot, and it all came back up. Probably around 9:30, 10 o'clock. That stuff happens, right? That happens. I'm sure AT&T has a much more redundant network, but redundancies also create problems, right? Redundancies increase the configuration complexity, so it's easier to make a mistake and take stuff down. Where when you don't have redundancy, it's very simple, but if it goes down, it goes down, right? So, there are redundant switches. I used to work on some Cisco 5500 switches with redundant processor blades, and everything was redundant power supplies, redundant everything, so that you wouldn't have a switch go down because of a failure. But that's very expensive for my small company to afford, so they just have switch stacks, and they have redundant power supplies, but the switch could still go down, right? And then you don't have a network. These things happen. They take a long time to troubleshoot, a long time to figure out. The difference is when mine happened, I took down a branch with like 100 employees. When that happens at AT&T, they take down half the country, right? But it still is just sitting there trying to figure out what's going on and fixing it. These things happen in technology. I know a lot of people don't know how technology works. They just use it, and there's a whole team of network engineers and people that go out and troubleshoot this stuff. We don't always get a lot of credit. People hate us when it's down. They love us when it's up. They don't think about us when it's up, really. But, stuff happens. And stuff happens at AT&T and Verizon and everywhere else. That's why we use a Verizon at work. My cell phone is on Verizon through work. But I also have a Wi-Fi, right? This is on T-Mobile. I have my Spectrum internet at home, but that's my backup internet. My wife has Tello, right, and that runs on T-Mobile's network too. Just different networks available in case you have a problem. We also have ham radios. We can get on a local repeater and talk to each other. There's other ways to communicate, and you have to think about that, right? It only takes one small little piece to go out or cause a problem and can take the country down, right? So think about that, and also in like a situation where you're dealing with some kind of a nationwide catastrophe and everybody's going crazy. It's not going to take long for the cellular network to go down, or it's going to become overloaded and you're just not going to be able to make any calls. They have a limit as to how many calls and how much data they can process. You see this at places like Kings Island when it's really busy the first day of Winterfest. There's no 4G or 5G connectivity, right? It's just maybe a little bit and you get one page and then it times out, right? Because everybody is trying to use the data at once and it just can't handle thousands of people trying to use one tower at the same time, you know? So that's, if there's any kind of an emergency situation, cell phones are going to kind of be unavailable. So make sure they're not your only way to communicate, because we don't have a lot of payphones and landlines around anymore, right? Landlines are becoming a thing of the past. Even those of you who have a landline, a lot of times have been replaced by a digital voice over IP type of device, right, that's tied into your home phone line. But without power, without connectivity, that goes down. It's not just an analog line running underground all the way back to your phone company anymore. Even AT&T, who provides landlines in this area, is doing away with the landlines, and they're actually putting in a digital circuit and then making the landline work off of that. So, you know, landlines might go away, cell phones might go away, hopefully not all at the same time. But I don't think cyber attacks can happen, right? But it's more often, it's just a broken piece of hardware, a misconfiguration. Somebody made a mistake when they put the equipment in, and you have to troubleshoot it and figure out what it is. So that's a network engineer's perspective on what happens. I've been a network engineer for 30 years. I've been troubleshooting networks since Novell Netware 2.11. And, well, really ELS level 2. I worked on some of that, but it wasn't, when I became a network engineer, it wasn't currently being sold. But Network 2.11, and then 3.12 was really a big, 3.12, I installed a bunch of it, right? 4.11, I installed a bunch of that too. So I've been doing networking for a very long time, since before Windows was a thing, right? Since it was all DOS. So that's just my perspective on it. Sometimes things break and they take a while to troubleshoot and fix. All right, I'll talk to y'all later. This is Tom, your Frugal Prepper.